All right, it's 3 o'clock, and I'm going to call this meeting of the Audit Committee to order. First item, I guess we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to do a quorum call. Chairwoman Scott. Here. Regent Bennett. Here. And Regent Garza. Here. So we do have a quorum. At this time, we're going to ask for a moment of silence. Amen. Okay, we're going to read our Del Mar College vision statement. Del Mar College will be the premier choice of life-changing educational opportunities provided by responsive, innovative facility staff who empower students to improve local, global communities. Okay, Del Mar College is streaming live audio and video from the official Hoc Bylaws, Audit Committee on the college's website in real time, with the exception of portions of the meeting considered as closed session by statute. First item on the agenda, are there any public comments? Anyone from the public wish to address the Audit Committee?
There are none, Mr. Chair.
Don't have anybody, okay. All right, we're gonna switch the agenda a little bit. We're gonna start with item 1, but we're gonna switch items 2 and 3. So we'll take item 3 first, as we have some members of our external audit group here. So things for discussion and possible action. Review of our committee charter, including statement of purpose and specific goals. We did some work on that last time, but we need to be enlightened some more.
Johnson Woods performs the external audit. Getting used to the new situation here. Oh, and I gave you all a handout. I promised that I won't read all of this. I just wanted to give you, since the audit committee is fairly new, just a reminder of what the external audit is and what the purposes are and what my responsibilities are. You know, a lot of times it gets kind of confusing when you say audit. External audit, what that means is that we're expressing an opinion on the financial statements. So the purpose of our audit is to take the records that are provided and are the responsibility of the management of Del Mar College and do procedures and audit procedures on those financial statements and express an opinion whether they're fairly stated in all material respects in compliance with GAAP. In addition to that, because you're a governmental entity, you're also subject to standards related to governmental auditing standards. And what that primarily means is we're looking at the grants and expressing a couple opinions on that. So this handout that I presented shows you basically the various things that over the years that are included in the financial statements and who are the governing boards, like the Governmental Accounting Office and OMB. So basically what happens is we come in and we get the financial statements. We're tying down the financial statement records, and we do a risk assessment on the procedures used to accumulate those numbers to the financial statements. And then then based on our assessment of the risks, we do tests. We do walkthroughs and stuff of internal control. So like if Raul tells me that a certain control is in place, then we'll actually say, okay, we're going to test that to make sure that that control is in place. So then The other thing is that I wanted to point out to you is just to give you a breakout of during the audit, if we were to find, and so far this year we have not found any, so I just want to emphasize that, but if we were to find some deficiencies, there's a definition here of what those deficiency levels can be. So material weakness is the most severe, and a significant deficiency is somewhat less. And I think this little handy table on page 3 kind of shows you how we look at those items. Because another concept, of course, is materiality. So I'm not going to find a $10, $1,000, a $10,000 necessarily impropriety, because that's not my goal. My goal is to say that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. So that materiality level makes a difference in how I do my audit. So we're not drilling down to that lower level. Internal audit does some of that, but we're making sure that, more importantly, that you have controls in place to make sure that everything is in the financial statements is fairly stated in all material respect. So normally, if you do a test of a sample, you're going to find something wrong if you do that test, if the controls are not in place. So so far this year, okay, we're pretty much on target with our audit. So the financial statements are prepared by your accounting personnel, John Johnson and Kathy West, and reviewed by Mr. Garcia. And we are in the process of actually reviewing those right now. So I wanted to kind of point out the standards that we're looking at, and in addition to those standards, there's also GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Boards, and also the Coordinating Board. So the Coordinating Board has an actual financial statement template that you are required to follow. And for the college, this is something that's a little confusing sometimes to people, but once a year we convert to what the Coordinating Board requires, which is a business type single purpose entity. So your financial statements that you're going to have audited are very much like a business. And basically what that means is that during the normal part of a year, government does funds. So they keep their accounting records based on funds, like there's a fund for fixed assets, there's a fund for debt service. But once a year, required by government accounting standard boards for about 20 years now, we convert those to a business type balance sheet and income statement. Only they call it net positions and net changes in revenues and expenses, which is your income statement, which is the same as your income statement. So that's what's confusing about that is I just wanted to point out to y'all there's two things, really. You bring on your debt to the balance sheet. So instead of having a separate fund for debt, the debt is actually a liability on your balance sheet. So normally in governmental fund accounting, debt payments are an expense. But on business type entities, those debt payments are going to reduce that liability on your balance sheet. And the second thing is capital assets normally would be on a separate governmental fund, but now they're on the balance sheet as well. Those are the two. I mean, there's other things as well, but for the most part, that is the main thing that affects the college when you're looking at the financial statements. For the current year, I thought I'd point out just a couple of highlights of things that affected the audit. You all are pretty familiar with this from prior years, but one of the things is a couple of years ago, maybe like 7 years ago, for pensions and about 4 years ago for health benefits, you were required to record the liability for your share of pension and post-employment, other post-employment benefits, which you'll hear us say OPEBs. So OPEBs, other post-employment benefits, which basically is health insurance. So for retirees, health insurance for retirees. And you are part of, and required to be a part of a multi-employer shared cost pension plan and for the most part, and the health benefits. So those are, there's a little information in here about those items. The reason that affects the audit is that the numbers are prepared by an actuary that tell us how much our share, since it's a multi-employer plan, how much our share, Del Mar College's share of that is each year. And, you know, actuaries, they're the only people that have just a little more personality than us CPAs. And as you, a couple CPAs here in the room probably agree with me. You know, each year we have to, as part of the audit, actually read the actuarial report, and there's some templates, and your personnel actually go through and mostly John Johnson, he calculates what those amounts are, and then we audit that. And I actually tie it back to the TRS and ERS reports to make sure everything's correct. The problem with it is it's an estimate that you have no control over, and sometimes it matters with you're part of a multi-group, so maybe your proportionate share of the entire thing changes from year to year, and it has swings. I think this year's swing was, between the two of those, was a net swing of about $4 million on your balance sheet. So it has some effect, and that's one of the things. But it's a good. I'm glad that the Government Accounting Standards Board's added that to the pile of things that are required, only in the sense that it is a truer picture of your balance sheet. So your balance sheet, it's a point-in-time financial statement. This is where you are, what your net positions are at this date, August 31st, 2021. And that balance, even though it may swing 3 or 4 million from year to year, and I'm simplifying that, it's also showing you that that is a large number, especially on the health insurance. And sometimes the reasons the swings is the assumptions. Like, as an example, most of you have heard that on television I always hear that my health insurance premiums are going down and are becoming more affordable, but then we get the bill. And I mean, I think yours is only $675 a person, ours is $800, so y'all are doing pretty good. But anyway, that's one thing that affects the audit. Another thing that affected it this year were the grants. A lot of COVID grants came out this year, and I've talked to, I mean, Mr. Garza, you're new, so they've heard this all before somewhat, but one of the way the grants kind of work is there's the OMB puts out a compliance supplement every year in August, and it tells us these are the attributes that you have to test on these grants. Then we also have all the grants. We have to total them all up, and there's certain calculations to define whether they're type A or type B, and we are required to audit a certain amount of those grants, and maybe certain grants every third year. And then if they're high risk, you have to audit them. So a lot of these new COVID grants are like the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, HERF, you've heard, are ones that we had to audit. And also, the other part is, many of you, even in businesses, are hearing this. What happened is the government gave people money, and it's not just colleges and it's not just governments, it's like doctors' offices and other places where they said, here's the money, we'll let you know if you have to pay it back. Because we're going to tell the rules come out as we go, you know. So that's one of the things that's changing. Well, one of the new types of grants that you all got about $3 million worth for the current 2021 was based on lost revenue. And so we auditors have been saying, okay, now how do we audit that? And they said, they gave us a legal answer, fact and circumstances, which means we don't know yet. But they'll let us know if we're wrong. So far, with that in mind, though, we think we've done a really good job of going through and auditing that. We're still wrapping up the grant test work. So far, no findings that could not be cleared. It's a very tedious process, but the college has added to their staff in the grant department, which has helped immensely because the rules keep changing and are more and more detailed and the requirements higher and higher. So those are probably the two main things that were affecting the audit, and the rest is our normal audit, count it, confirm it, calculate it, cash, receivables, things like that. I put in here just one little comment about next year, because I'm always thinking, next year is a new pronouncement that they keep kicking down the road for about 7 years called lease accounting, and this is something that probably needs to be addressed now or very soon, in that basically it's saying that you have to record all leases as capital leases. The reason I looked at this a few times, but then they kept changing. When COVID came, they moved the deadline another year and another year. And sometimes when that happens, they, how do I want to say, they reduce the requirements so it's more practical. Sometimes that happens, but it has not happened on GASB 87 yet, to my knowledge. So that is something that needs to be addressed, because you guys have a couple of leases that are like $1 a year, but the way that pronouncement reads, you also pay for all the maintenance and upkeep on those buildings, and that under the standard may be considered like payment, an incentive payment for you to have the lease, so it might have to be calculated in some way. So that's next year, though. We're not worried about that yet. I do have a schedule. We stuck to the schedule. This was in the engagement letter. They were actually about a week early. Most of my clients try to give me a good draft of the financial statements by 4 o'clock on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So that they actually got it early, because we didn't schedule it until today to have the draft. But I do have it all, and I'm in the process of reviewing that as part of our quality control standard. As for auditing firms, we'll have a concurring or a quality review as well, and I'm hoping to get that done on Thursday by John Shepard, one of my partners. We will be delivering 2 weeks from today. Actually, well, this is kind of a question. The final report, with the exception of last year, was usually done a final report Thursday before your board meeting on Tuesday. So it goes out in your board packages. Some clients like that to be a draft, so that if you have any input on it, we can finalize it later, but it's really entirely up to you. So I think we're in good shape to finalize it. There's still some things we have to finish up auditing. We're waiting on attorney's letters. That's one last thing that has to wait till the day to issue. We have to get those. We can't get those too early in case something happens between this week and next week. One of those standards thing. So we're in good shape to get that to you by, that would be a week from Thursday. And make it final, or if you decide you wanted to just do it in draft form, then you would have to approve a draft, because the deadline for the financial statements is being sent to the coordinating board is January 1st, and normally you'd want the board to approve it before then. So this is the last meeting, so it has to be done that day. So that's just a question you may want to discuss. A draft or no draft.
What have we done previously?
You've always done a final, except last year there was something pending, and COVID related.
Raul, I don't know if you remember what went on, but the extension, there was some extenuating circumstances. I think it had to do with just the COVID kind of thing, and I think everything got pushed down. I don't remember it specifically. Do you, Mr.?
Yeah, I do apologize. I don't recall, but my guess would be it's definitely the COVID that sort of pushed things back a little bit for us.
I think one of the I think one of the things was that the rules for COVID, some of the COVID grants they told us they were going to have a supplement with those rules in it, and it never came. And it came actually December 22nd, so we just issued without. But we guessed and we did it right. There is an accounting standard for what if the rules aren't out yet, which basically says use your best knowledge. So, but anyways, I think sometimes with the quality of your staff, your accounting staff, and my firm, normally I doubt that there would be anything in there that you wouldn't want to finalize, but.
We have any additional questions? Mr. Bennett, any questions for the?
I don't have any questions.
I've just got one. I know that you said that there was a schedule that you were going to include, I guess, in the, what, can you just, for my own knowledge, the schedule, or what's the timeline? When do you begin your work, and then when is it,
Okay,
when do
so
you
page
target it
6
ending? I'm sorry.
Page 6 is the timeline.
I was looking for it and I missed it, I guess. Okay.
So typically, we are in the planning phase in August. September is the time frame that the staff gives us the CFA, which is the grant. It's the report of the statement of federal and state assistance that helps us do the calculations on what we need to test for grants. Full complete trial balances by October 15th, and then we start auditing. One thing we found is a lot of times when we have data requests, clients think they're done when they give us those, but we have to actually ask questions and audit those. So the footnotes we have in draft form, and we're in the process of reviewing those, wrapping up our test work, finalizing everything right now.
Now, audit request list, does the board have any involvement or any input in that, or where does that come from? I guess?
Actually, that isn't, but I did send you a letter in the audit committee this year, and on the very last page of here, 8, I just sort of wanted to, since this is our first meeting, discuss, normally external auditors, those charged with governance, which would mean the audit committee and board, has direct access to me. And these are kind of the things that I've listed here that typically, if you have concerns about or things that you can call me, you can put it in the email that I sent you, email or whatever, so that we can discuss that. And so keeping in mind that my goal as external audit is the financial statements being fairly presented in all material, that they're correct. But during that, like if there was something that you felt like there was a concern about, I would like to hear about that.
Well, I'm just going to ask Carol, I guess, because I'm new
I know,
here,
right.
and I'm really looking to. I don't want to. What do you call it? Upset the ship
Right.
for this year, because we're getting close to
Right.
meeting the deadline. But say, for instance, from an audit committee member standpoint, if we chose to say we're going to create a process, or we do have a process, we just need to make sure we educate our fellow region members, so that if they do have some things that they want to get put on the audit review list, that maybe they go to the chair of the audit committee or the audit committee, and then we submit that, so that it's not, you don't have 9 members
Right,
coming to
right.
you with the same list, maybe.
Well, and it's, anything you tell me is confidential. So I think from the audit standpoint, in fact, during the planning phase, so in August when we get the engagement letter, there's also a letter that goes to the board. It would, and most of my clients, if they had an audit committee, it probably would have gone to the audit committee. And I just want to say, like, that's great if you all want to agree to that, but I also would like to be able to say you could any one of
Yeah.
you could speak to me. If you had a concern that affected my role as external auditor over the financial statement. So, you know,
And I would like to say that we should encourage all 9 of us to, if we have a concern, to go directly to
Go
her
directly, okay.
in confidence.
Well, if it just got too burdensome or
right,
you're being pulled in 10 different directions, then we
Right,
would
and-
hope that you'd come to the
and-
audit committee and
and-
say, we gotta rein this thing in a little bit, so we just make sure that
Right.
we can focus our efforts.
I mean, typically what, you know, having been doing this for many years, I don't want to say how many because it's too many. I started when I was 9. Typically, maybe there's a concern about something that, let's say, expense reports or some other thing. It's best if the earlier I get that communication, and then I can expand my procedures, and maybe when I'm doing my procedures, expand that area to see if that's something to worry about. That being said, if I had too many, I think I would probably, as a matter of fact, probably try to report to you all. I mean, if I had, like, I mean, there's a limited amount of time that I have to work with. But I agree with Mr. Bennett in that, you know, I do want to know, like, if there's, you all have a role as those charged with governance, and you don't need to know if somebody stole $100, but you do need to know if the financial statements are if there's fraud, the financial statements could be misstated. If there's, you know, if there's something that would generate a lawsuit, if there was something you knew about a lawsuit out there that was pending or whatever, it would be required to be disclosed in the financial statements. So that's the relationships, you know.
So if you get a report from a regent, do you ever, or would you ever delegate that to the internal auditors?
You know, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I haven't had that situation.
Okay.
You know, if I had something that I really have never had anything that we couldn't feel comfortable concluding for my purpose. You know what I mean? Like does it affect the financial statement?
And you've got a higher standard than they have.
Right, materiality comes into play, and that's you know, like, to me, the internal audit's function is a little more granular, and that's why you pay so much, because they're here for 6 months, you know. But my purpose is to make sure the numbers, and your numbers are big numbers. So, I mean, I actually put in here some highlights of this year's financial statements on page 7. And so just to kind of get a feel for it, like this year, your operating loss is about $100 million. Okay, the good news is your non-operating revenue and expenses is $123 million. So you have actually like a profit, so to speak, of $23 million for the year. So that increased your net positions. But keeping in mind that like materials a concept, but then under the grants, it's a little different. So if you violated something on with federal funds, misspent federal funds, that ends up being in one of my other reports. On the financial statements, I have the primary auditor's report, which is expressing opinion on the financial statements, and then there are 2 other reports. One is which are basically related to grants. One is expressing opinion on the CFA, the statement of federal expenditures, and sometimes we also file one for the state funding that you get, depending on the size of that. If it's over a certain dollar amount, then it has to be included in the report. I think it was included last year. But on those grants, I have OMB coming out with a compliance supplement that says you have to test these things, and you have to test internal controls over these things. And if I were to find a problem, then it gets reported in that report. And it could be a material weakness, it could be a significant deficiency, like I have also included in there. And we've had them before. It's been, I think the last 2 years have been clean without any findings. So I'm required to report those, and then you have to file a corrective action plan. And everything regarding those grants also gets reported in the Federal Clearinghouse. So there's a lot of detail there.
So this is, I think, a good conversation with Dan in the room and Tammy as well, because part of the process that the board has gone through over the last several months with our bylaws and our ethics statements is if a regent is aware of a fraud issue, an ethical concern, either amongst the board or within staff, that we're developing some procedures with some direction for the board on how to present that. You certainly are available to communicate directly with internal or external auditors because they report to us. Any of the 9 board members are. But there could also be a little bit of a process by which board members would know kind of where to go with a concern and what kind of concern it is. Is it a material concern that would affect our financial statement and our audit as relate to, again, the big picture issues? Is it an internal procedural issue or a potential area of fraud there? So I think that is probably a good discussion for staff to help us maybe develop those procedures a little bit more fully so board members know where to go with those kind of concerns. I think that it's good conversation.
Mr. Garcia, I was giving you an opportunity to talk about some of the work that you've had over the last couple of months, and are there any areas of concern on your side and what the external auditor has found or asked about?
Yes, I will begin that I'm at the mercy of my 2 audit firms. So at this point in time, I don't have anything to report. I think so far the team that we put together, that is John Johnson, Dr. West, and a few other folks in the business area, have done a great job over the last couple of years in trying to remediate any past audit findings, and we continue to monitor and make sure that we have good, sound internal controls. Needless to say, the operating environment is a constant change, and so we try to stay on top of those changes and adopt accordingly. So I hope that answers your question.
Sure. Dr. Escamilla, anything on your side that?
No, sir. We stay in very close touch with one another. Bridget and I, General Counsel, Mr. Garcia and I are always asking each other, is there any anomalies out there? We're always talking and processing that. That is a constant theme as we're protecting the college, protecting employees, protecting people in general. So the short answer is no, sir.
Okay. I'm sure we're going to get more, you're going to get a lot more questions when you come forward with the report. A couple of things that I'm going to ask you about here so that if they come up at the Board of Regents meeting, it's not a surprise. You were talking about, how GASB rules have changed related to liabilities that you have related to your retirement accounts and your
OPEBs.
I
OPEBs,
didn't know the acronym, but okay. And so when we decide, say for instance, you talked also about a $1 lease, getting a facility for $1 a year lease. When we look at those decisions, are we getting a full analysis of what decisions we should be making in terms of permanent employees or contracted services and that type of thing, so that we so the board can decide then what is the best option to do in terms of long-term effects on, say, for instance, these concerns about liabilities as they relate to employees and pensions and
Okay, can you hear me now?
yes.
The state of Texas mandates that you, for the most part, that you use that pension, the pension plan and the health benefit plan. The hard part is the actuary assumptions change from year to year. It's a big liability. You want to monitor it over time, but you really didn't really have a choice. It's not like you can go change your pension plan. All colleges have that plan.
Yeah, I'm not referring to changing the plans. I'm just referring to additional activities that we're looking at doing. Like, again, we've got that presence in Aransas that we're looking at, that we've already, I guess, committed to. We've talked about a presence in San Patricio. We've expanded our footprint in terms of I want to say space, occupied space. And so I'm just wondering if, looking at the concerns about the long-term liability position, is there a full analysis being done?
So when we're looking into the expanding of, were you going to say something, Mr. Bennett? I didn't.
Well, I'll let you do it first.
So from our experience, what we've done is we've brought it to the board from day one, and basically, even before we invest a lot of work into feasibility of any sort, and we bring it to the board and say, hey, this is a conversation that is being generated and so forth. Do we have a concurrence to proceed, or is there anything against it? And we'll go with, I mean, those discussions range from full board to officers and all kinds of things. So we assess before we ever step foot forward. We know that we don't just go and execute those kind of agreements without the board. It's got to be part of the board's vision. We check that on the front end. I mean, I can go back well over 10 years ago when we opened the Northwest Center, and that's exactly how we did that. And we looked for those concurrences before we went out to do our due diligence and do the studies and so forth. That was a 10-year lease at no charge, actually. So I think the short answer is yes, we've always brought them before the board in one form or fashion, and there are some out there currently that have never come to fruition, and then we have those that we've been in past 10 years, and so we have everything in between that, with the Aransas Pass being one of the newest ones to be brought on board. In terms of the long-term liability, Mr. Garcia, can you help me with that as it relates to these leases?
Yes, so essentially, this new GASB is really going to change the look of our financial statements, and that is beyond our control. A lot of the decisions that have been made in the past, and so this just changes up how we report the lease liability, but it's already been part of the decision process of the past, i.e. being transparent with the board, vetting those decisions against the strategic plan and what have you. So what you're starting to see is the impact of those decisions as a result of these external changes that are beyond our control, that's going to require us to report this on our balance sheet. But those decisions, once again, were driven strategically in past conversations.
Yep.
We're just now responding to that new reporting requirements.
And as it relates to the HR side, benefits are always calculated in any kind of augmentation of staff, whether they're full or part-time or whatever the required level of benefits for the type of employee that are brought in and and grown as a result of these kinds of efforts. I hope that's hitting your answer.
Yeah, it covers about three-quarters of it. I just know that there were some changes that we had to take into account. And I'm just kind of drawing back on the experience that I had at the city and what a big, huge, I'm going to say, shift we had to make once that we actually realized what our financial position was after they implemented those new rules, right? And so that's why I'm just asking, and I know that those decisions were made previously, and again, I'm not second-guessing any of those decisions at all. And again, I know that the rules have changed. I'm just asking, going forward, are we looking at the full impact of how?
Oh, thank you. I keep forgetting to turn this, I have to turn it on, it goes off the speaker. I think it's a good opportunity to make you just view that, look at those one more, look at those things once again. And it's some resources are going to have to be utilized to do that, though. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to put a right-of-use asset on your books and a liability. And so in the past, those expenses were flowing through your, for maintenance or whatever, or rent would be running through rent. Instead of that, now it would be depreciation and interest. But it's what they're trying to do, and the same thing as that they did with the pensions, is they're saying, what is the true snapshot, the true picture at this point in time? So like the pension, people felt pretty good before they put that on there. I mean, most people ended up, like the college, with a negative fund balance at that point, and it's that liability. And I think overall, I think it was a good pronouncement to put into this, into your financial statements, because it's a true picture, and it makes the governing boards aware when they're saying we want to add to our benefits of our staff, how much that actually is adding. So.
Mr. Bennett, you had some additional comments to
Rudy,
make?
let me
Sure.
just say that I always look at the cash flow. It doesn't really matter to me if it goes on the balance sheet as a liability. If we've got a $1 lease and we pay $1 out, the cash flow is important to me. If we have to record $1 million liability and a $990,000 asset, okay, it just brings the balance sheet up a little bit. But the cash flow is what I look at on the leases. And I'll tell you, I have studied the pension liability, and that is extremely complex. And what I got out of studying it was if our employment changes dramatically, it's going to have a big impact on us. If we decrease the number of employees we have, all the other ones that are retired, we're going to carry a much higher liability for them. So if your employment structure changes dramatically, it's going to have an impact on you. If your employment structure, the way I read it, if your employment structure stays steady, it just flows with the actuarial assumptions. And if we get stuck with 3% of it, we're always going to get hit with 3%.
Sorry, we got way off on a tangent. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I know we got off way on a tangent. These are just questions that I felt might come up at the board meeting, so. Carol, anything else? All right. We don't have any other questions? Thank you so much. Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Garza, I do have one more question
Okay.
for Ms. Cook. Ms. Cook, you mentioned that we are on target for a deliverable of a report at our board meeting. Is there any pending items that you are waiting for today that could derail that deliverable by the board meeting?
I don't think so.
Microphone?
I don't think so. I think we're still waiting on the legal letters, but my understanding is there's nothing out there that would need to be disclosed. So unless something like that came in, and even that we'd be able to draft the footnote. So, okay.
I just add one final thing. If there ever was a $100 discrepancy due to some bad behavior, believe me, I'd bring it to you all. So it's gonna be, you're gonna at least hear about it.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go back to item 1 then. For the organizational discussion and possible action, review and committee charter, including statement of purpose and specific goals. Quite frankly, it's been a few weeks since we've met, and so
Didn't have any questions or any issues
You don't
related
have-
to that, I'm not sure.
I don't remember us having a spirited conversation or debate on that, so I think what we've got,
Mr. Chair, that's included sort of as a catch-all to allow the committee
okay?
to weigh in. I mean, every time you meet, you might want to review those. That's what the Ad Hoc Bylaws Committee did. They just had their,
Okay.
standing agenda item, so that if you had anything you wanted to bring up as the committee moves along,
Okay,
you could, but there wasn't anything specific on there. So I
Okay.
apologize for not making that
that's
clear.
okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
But that gives you the latitude, to bring organizational things anytime y'all wish at any meeting.
Thank you, Counselor, appreciate that. The overview of college audit functions and calendar, we got that, so from our external auditor, will we be getting, or will we have some interface with the internal auditor at some point, right? So we can get that
That-
calendar
that-
then.
That's correct. That's your next agenda item.
And so I think that when we get that item, we'll put those two together, and then we might be able to come up with a calendar for the audit committees. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, committee objectives, again, that goes back to us being able to get the last part of it. At some point, we're gonna get input related to what we feel we need to look over after in terms of IT. When will we get that kind of a,
Go ahead, Oak.
There'll also be some information that's more appropriate for closed session that you'll
Okay.
get on that'll provide you some detail.
I guess in light of number 1, maybe I would like to ask for staff to develop, as opposed to kind of an ad hoc, call us when you need us, meeting schedule. Maybe staff comes up with a recommended meeting schedule for the audit committee for '22 that's based on the calendar of activity, and that way we could better plan accordingly, and you can have us meet in advance of specific board meetings as necessary. But if you all came out with a suggested meeting calendar that fulfills the charter, then we can still meet as needed if something comes up, but that would give us some regular meeting dates to look forward to. What do you think, Mr. Chairman?
I think that's a great idea.
We'll be glad to.
Thank you,
That
Doctor.
works better for us, too.
Okay.
Absolutely. Consider it done.
So that covers identify information and resources to support the committee. I think that Carol just jumped ahead, and that's good. No, that's great, that's good. Secondly, do we have, I know that in our regular board meetings, Board of Regents meetings, we have someone taking minutes or notes and stuff. Is that something that we can assign to some?
Yes, and
Somebody?
that's on me. I'm sorry.
That's
It was
okay.
an oversight. You should have a standing item also for review of prior committee meeting minutes, and then you
Yeah, if
approve
we
them.
could just get kind of a summary, because I go back through my notes, and I'm not the best note taker there is. And then we've talked also about establishing a committee meeting schedule. Is there anything anybody wants to add to that? Okay, we're good there. Then we've done items 1 and 3. And for item 2, we're going to go into a closed session. So at this time, unless there's something else someone wants to mention in open session, we're going to go into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, and that's consultation with our legal counsel regarding pending or contemplated litigation or a settlement offer and the seeking of legal advice from counsel with possible discussion and action in open session. Item B, Texas Government Code 551.076, deliberation regarding security devices or audits regarding the deployment or specific occasions of implementation of security personnel or devices, or a security audit with possible discussion and action in open session. And then item C will be Texas Government Code 551.089, deliberation regarding security devices or audits regarding security assessments or deployments related to information resources, technology, IT, network security information, or the deployment of specific occasions for implementation of security personnel, critical infrastructure, or security devices with possible discussion and open action in open session. All right, so at this time, we'll go into closed session.
Mr. Chair, the time is 3:50.
Okay, thank you. We're going to reconvene the meeting of the Audit Committee. What time is it, Counselor? At 4:47. All right, do we have a motion for our committee at this particular time?
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion that we accept the Weaver Risk Assessment Report and the 3-year audit plan, and recommend that we recommend the acceptance of it to the full board.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Great, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the entire committee will recommend to the Board of Regents at our next regular meeting, such action. Okay? At this time, is there any additional, we've finished the 3 items already. And before we adjourn, I'd just like to say that it's been my pleasure to serve as chairman of the Audit Committee for our first 2 organizational and business meetings. And as I mentioned initially, it was a commitment that I made as an interim chair. Our Regent Bennett is going to now assume his rightful position as chairman of the Audit Committee. And so any correspondence and any organizational efforts will be made on his part. Okay? Thank you. With that, we're adjourned.